Awesome. And we are live. Hello, world. It's noon. So we are here with Purse Strings is here, and we're here with Jana LaVanway. And we're super excited to have you here today. And where are you tuning in from?
Yeah, hi, Maggie. I am in lovely Tempe, Arizona, which is outside the Phoenix area.
Oh, yeah, nice and warm over there. That's awesome.
Beautiful day.
I love this technology because we can pull out people from all over the country. So it's awesome. Anyone jumping in, we'd love for you to say hello. Let us know where you're coming from today. We're super excited to be here and talk about, retirement because this pandemic has changed it up for a lot of women. So, we're going to dive into that because it has changed many people's plans. I know this one lady who had 2 more years of teaching and she's like, I'm not learning this internet thing, calling it a day now, and she's trying to teach French online. I was like, good luck with that one. That sounds, I was like, that sounds very difficult. French to high schoolers online. But yeah, the retirement has really changed for a lot of people due to this pandemic. So I'm excited to see, what you kind of bring of diving into that and understanding, what to do from there. Got Chicago tuning in, classic. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes just to get some people to jump on. But just to remind people, we're here every Thursday at noon Central, always talking about different financial topics. We really believe that if we're not talking about it, we're not learning about it. So we have to bring these conversations to the forefront. This month, we're talking about leaving corporate, which has been a great ball of knowledge from, retirement and spousal 401ks. Good things like that. And next month, we'll be talking about entrepreneurship, which is going to be super fun as well. So, leaving corporate, go right into entrepreneurship. So it should be fun. And it's been a lot of great things that we've been learning. And a lot of people do want to leave corporate. And so maybe retirement's the answer.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, right? Maybe it's a
mix. Exactly. So yeah, we're here to have you teach us how to really make that assessment. So awesome. Well, I will start by giving you a little intro and then we can get going. So this is Jana LaVanway from Juncture Wealth Strategies. And she really believes it's the why of wealth that matters most to her clients. And she's known for being able to make the complex world of finance and investing understandable. When difficult times or decisions arise, she's confident that she can address the issues in a make or break plan. And her clients can have peace of mind through these life-changing events. She helps people achieve their hopes and dreams by partnering with them to navigate the markets and financial concerns. And so she does wealth management, helps you with philanthropy, tax planning, retirement planning, all that good stuff. So we're so excited that you're here today and to show your expertise.
Well, thank you.
Of course. With that, I'll give the floor over to you. I'll pop up the slides when you share your screen and it's all yours.
Okay. Well, thank you, Maggie. I'm so excited to be here too. This is awesome. I think this is such a timely topic. As you mentioned, leaving corporate encompasses a lot of different things for people. And I can tell you, I've been watching these live shows as much as possible, and they've all been great and all just very, very important as you try to build your financial future. And my topic today, I think, is really timely because I have a lot of clients and a lot of people just calling who just know me and asking these questions because the world has changed for a lot of people, and maybe their financial plan needs changed. Maybe they want to, as you mentioned, your friend, leave a little bit early or leave a little bit differently. And so that's why I was really excited to get the opportunity to talk about this today. And hopefully, I can give, everybody's situation is different, but I want to at least give a framework of thought as to how to approach these questions to help make good decisions. and also, where to go for more help, because that's always important too. So with that being said, I have just a little presentation to help keep us on track, and welcome any questions about this. We can go as deep in the weeds as you want or not with the time that we have. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. 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 I think you guys can see this. So our topic today: how to retire, whether you plan to or not. Many people plan for retirement for years and years and years. And as a rule of thumb, I would tell anybody that you're never too young to start financial planning and planning for retirement. Everything tells you in the math that the more time you have to plan, the better your results will be in terms of saving money and investing. But many people, maybe they haven't done as much planning, or they have, but now their plans have changed. So that's where we're going today. Let's see if I can get this to shift here. Oh, boy. It's not wanting to. Oh, sorry guys. It's not wanting to shift over here. Okay. Okay, so we're talking about retirement goals. About a third of Americans surveyed recently then this was done in 2020, have said their retirement targets have changed since the pandemic began. And there may be some obvious reasons for that, but like I said, everybody's situation is a little bit different. So I want to at least talk about some of the things that are happening to people, and maybe some of these, resonate with you. The top 3 reasons cited in this survey was that people wanted to spend more time with friends and loved ones. Maybe that is just because they found that they didn't get to do that when they were in some sort of a quarantine situation, or maybe, they had elderly parents they didn't get to see. Maybe, as it said, focus on priorities outside of work. Maybe you miss traveling and you want to do more of that, or just being able to spend more time on hobbies. And like I like to call it, living your best life. And sometimes living your best life doesn't mean going to work every day. Depends on what you do, And then the third one is what's facing a lot of people too, is a change in the work situation. People, I think, have gotten very burned out. I know even with me in my role, I'm used to meeting with clients during the day, virtually or in person. And when it only became Zoom meetings, it was very exhausting, and it's hard to connect, and it's hard to keep people engaged that way. So I think there was, people getting burned out from work. Maybe they weren't, qualified to do the work that they ended up having to do. Maybe they've got a mandate situation that they're not able to fulfill. But regardless, changes in work situation, I think, account for a lot of what's happening out there. And it's always good then to go back and make sure that you've got everything in place. I met with a client of mine just a couple of days ago this week, and she's been a nurse for 25 years, and now the last, year and a half in a hospital in intensive care. It's just been extremely draining. Her plan was to retire in 2 years, and she called me to say, Jana, I'm going to retire February 1st after I get my anniversary and my bonus that I'm going to get next year. I want to retire, so we need to meet to review that plan. So that's what we're going to talk about today, some of the steps that we're going to do. So what is the number one concern? Well, these are 3 ways of saying the exact same thing. Will I run out of money? Will my savings last as long as I do? Do I have enough? And that's a really hard question, because it's kind of subjective. We don't know the answers to a lot of the criteria that are going to come up. We don't know what your life expectancy is. We may say, hey, we're going to plan to a long age of 95 or 100 just in case. But we don't know what's really going to happen there. And this is where we want to control what we can control. And then we want to take into account all the variables that can happen. So we do spend a lot of time, talking about what's the concern? And I would add to that, it's, running out of money for people, that may be their voiced concern. But when you ask them, what keeps you up at night? Yeah, the why, as Maggie mentioned. I want to talk a little bit about the why with people too, is running out of money. Is it because you're afraid you won't be able to pay your bills and you won't be able to stay in your house? Or is it that you have a legacy plan of some asset you want to leave to your family or to a charity that you might not be able to do if you use too much money? Or you might not live the lifestyle you want. Many people plan for retirement and maybe they want to do hobbies or travel or do some fun things that they weren't able to do when they're working. And then if they have to retire sooner, or they haven't had a good plan in place, maybe they won't be able to do those things, and they don't want to have a retirement where they're just sitting there and watching TV 7 nights a week. So it's different for everybody. So yeah, the number one concern is consistent, I find, but I want to dive a little deeper into what the why is for that person. So with any financial planning conversation around retirement, I want to really focus on these 6 risks of retirement, because these are pretty consistent with everyone, that we want to address them and find out in their plan, have we accounted for how we're going to solve these risks? And, some will be easier for some people than others, but the main risk being, withdrawals, inflation, longevity, medical, markets, and flexibility. So let's go one by one and just talk a little bit about what makes up each of them. So withdrawals, when you retire, you got to make up for that paycheck. And where is your paycheck coming from in retirement? So with many people, depending on age, maybe it's Social Security, or maybe they have a pension from their job. Maybe they don't have those things available. They might have to start taking money out of savings. And that's really what this question is focused on, is how do you do that? Is there a safe way to do it? And how do you do it, with a lot of moving pieces going on? So we want to know how much are you going to need to take out and how often? Timing can be good or bad. I have people right now who actually are deciding to retire early because their accounts have grown so much and their house value's gone up so much in the last few years. So for them, it's just, looking at the math and saying, I may never get this much money again. So this is a good time to get out of the game, right? So we know it won't always be like that. So do you want to, time your withdrawals for good markets or bad markets? Penalties and taxes. Do you know the rules about that? With penalties and taxes, a lot of that applies if you have retirement accounts. And what kind of retirement accounts? Are they Roth IRAs or traditional IRAs or 401ks? So I run into a lot of people that are retiring and maybe they have a 401k. And we want to know what the rules of that are. A good example is I had a client that I talked to last week, and she's 57. She was planning to work until she was 62, but she'd like to get out sooner. But almost all of her saved money is in her 401k, and she's worked at her job a very long time. And she was really worried about, if she wanted to roll it over, if she was going to keep it there, wonder if she was going to keep working or find another job. So we were talking about options with her. And, there's a little known rule, Rule 55, and that says, if you leave a job after you turn 55 and before you're 59 and a half, and you need to withdraw money from that 401k, you can do that penalty free as long as it's in the same calendar year that you turned 55. So in her case, that rule was going to work really well for her because she was thinking she had a 10% penalty that turns out she wasn't going to have. So those are all things that we want to examine. Of course, any withdrawals from your retirement accounts are going to be subject to income tax. And then the account priority, many people retire, they have a number of accounts. They have retirement accounts, they have maybe Roth, maybe traditional, maybe they have a bank account or an after-tax brokerage account. Which accounts do you want to use in what order, and have a plan for that that's suited to your current tax situation. Most likely, that is how we would look at it. Also on this slide, I've got a little chart. So going back to timing, it says sequence of return risk. This is a study. These are studies and calculations. You can Google that term and pull up a number of different ones. And it's designed to illustrate how withdrawals are not always the same depending on how the market's doing. So in this case, we have portfolio A and portfolio B, and they're invested exactly the same. Therefore, the return is the same. The standard deviation and volatility measurements exactly the same. The people in A versus B are withdrawing 5% out of their portfolio every year, and this runs for 25 years. The only thing that differs between the two of them is the return order. So if you look at portfolio A, the first year at negative 15%, the second is negative 4, the third is negative 10. This person basically retired in a bad market and started taking their money out with negative returns early. Now, portfolio B uses the exact same list of returns, but it flip-flops them. So that negative 15 and so forth is now in their later years. And when they retired, they had the positive returns, 22%, 8%, 30%. They're taking the same amount of money out a year from the exact same portfolio, but they have drastically different results. Portfolio A runs out of money 5 years too soon, basically, whereas portfolio B not only doesn't run out of money, but they actually made money. So that just goes to show, that you can't control the market, but maybe through a good plan, we control how we address returns from year to year. So we want to have that flexibility built in. Number 2, inflation. We've been hearing about that a lot in the news right now. Inflation just means what will things cost in the future to you, and how will that affect you if your gallon of gas was $2 or $3 last year, and it's 20 years from now, maybe it's $7 or $8 a gallon, or a loaf of bread. You can use whatever you want. There's lots of data online to project things, but in retirement planning, we also want to assume that your money is growing to outpace inflation long term. We know that there may be years here and there where that doesn't happen, but it's difficult right now for people because if the money's just sitting in the bank, it's earning 0, and inflation, is almost 6%. So you're losing money every year at this rate. The Fed has said, and if you look at average inflation rates over time, I think you could say somewhere in the 2 to 3% range would be a long-term average as far as expectation or goals. So we may be a little bit higher now than normal, but we certainly want to account for these things when we're doing projections as far as what your cash flow needs are going to be. Longevity, will your money last as long as you do? So we don't know exactly how long everyone's going to live, but we want to plan on a long life just to stress test, right? And we also want to know, based on your plan, how are you spending your money during this time? The quantity of life versus the quality of life. For an example, I would say, many of my clients, when they're planning to retire, we want to plan to budget more, maybe their first 10 years of retirement, so that they could maybe travel more or do more of the things they like to do. And maybe as they get older, they maybe don't, do so many big trips or whatnot. So, we want to talk about, what do you want this picture to look like in retirement, and how are we going to make it last as long as you want it to? And a big piece of that is knowing what income you have that are from what I call lifetime sources. And that means things that you have some sort of a guarantee that they're not going to run out. Examples of that would be pensions, income annuities, and Social Security. Okay. Number 4 is a really big one too, and we're talking a lot about that in meetings, is medical expenses. So, you have during your working years health insurance, and then at age 65, you become eligible for Medicare. And then long-term care would be another set of expenses that tend to hit in older age, but not always. That would be when you can't take care of yourself and you need some help. How are you going to pay for that? Like I said, tends to be later. You think of people maybe in assisted living or getting a nurse that comes to their house to help them, bathe and get dressed and, make meals and things like that. But I had a client once who had a stroke at age 51 and needed to have a full-time nurse for 5 years as he was able finally to recover from that. So long-term care can be quite costly. In terms of numbers, I know both Fidelity and Schwab do pretty frequent studies on the costs of healthcare in retirement, and both of them in recent years have come out with numbers in the $300,000 to $400,000 range in terms of what amount you would need to have to pay for future medical care in retirement. And that sounds like a really big number. But inflation is hitting medical costs more and more, even more than grocery bills. And then secondly, Medicare doesn't cover everything. People talk about it like it does sometimes, but there are many out-of-pocket costs that people run into as they age that isn't covered by Medicare. Long-term care costs, I think, depending on what state you live in, I've seen numbers anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 a year to pay for nursing home care. And so, if you're a single person or if you're a married person, if you're married, how does that affect your spouse's standard of living if they happen to live a long, healthy life, but maybe you don't? So these are things we want to talk about and make sure we've counted on. Number 5, markets. I think we all think about that. In retirement, people tend to be a little more worried about the market because they don't want to see their portfolio take these huge drops. So we want to focus on what we call asset allocation. So we want to focus on how is your portfolio allocated? How much do you have in stocks versus bonds? So in growth versus safety, and make sure that your mix is appropriate for your plan. It's not just age-based, but everybody's financial situation is different. So, we want to make sure that your portfolio is holding hand in hand with the plan that you have in terms of how you're going to use it. Part of that is knowing your short-term versus your long-term needs. If you have money that you're going to need to withdraw in the next year or a couple years, wow, I would hate to have a big correction hit and take out a big chunk of that right when you needed it. So I would want to see that money is invested in a far more conservative way. Money you might not need for 10 years or 20 years, that can be more growth oriented and probably needs to be just to make up for inflation long term. So I think, one risk you might have in terms of how you invest is that you might have different buckets doing different things because they each have a different job. And that's part of a good plan, is to know how that asset allocation fits. Most people won't have just one bucket all invested the same that they're running a 30-year or more retirement plan out of. The other part of that conversation is risk. So as an advisor, we often talk about what is your risk tolerance, and how do you feel when the markets go up or down? Are you conservative? Are you aggressive? I like to look at it in terms of what's your risk tolerance versus your risk capacity. So an example of that would be, I have some clients, especially some of mine that are on the younger side, that are thinking of retiring, that, up till now, they've had very high risk tolerance, and many of them have made a lot of money by investing more aggressively, and that's worked for them. But boy, when we're gonna cut short that retirement timeline a little bit, their risk tolerance may not have changed. They say, Jana, I feel like I want to have more stock. I want to be aggressive. I want to go for those big returns. It's my job to evaluate what their capacity for risk is based on their plan. And, what happens sometimes is I have a client with a very aggressive risk tolerance that ends up with a far more conservative portfolio than they think they should have. And then we have that conversation. Likewise, I will have very conservative clients that, based out of fear, maybe want to get too conservative. And so through proper asset allocation in their portfolio, I can show them that we can have your safe money safe for when we need it. But if it's money that needs to outpace inflation 20 or 30 years from now, we may have to take a little bit more risk with that to get you where you need, but you have the time to weather the storm. So it's a very customized approach. And I think you should look at that a lot and not just talk about risk tolerance, which I think we all hear about a lot. Number 6, flexibility, often overlooked. So retirement means that you have to have flexibility too. Sometimes it means flexibility in income. Do you have to get a part-time job to make this plan work? Maybe you have some income needs that you could put off for a little bit. Flexibility in assets. How are you invested? Are you invested in things that will allow you to make changes or not? There are investments that won't allow you to make changes for years and years. Sometimes those will work in your portfolio and they're a good idea, but you don't want to run into that issue if you need the money. That somewhat also ties with liquidity, to have enough money in liquid cash to cover the needs that you're going to have. I once had a client that came to me after he had been retired for a couple years. And when he retired, an advisor had rolled his entire retirement 401k from work into one big annuity. And so he had plenty of monthly income, but he was having a hard time coming up with just some money to repair his roof. So he wasn't, he had all these surrender charges and things like that. So he didn't have flexibility of either assets or liquidity in that case. So the planning process is very simple, really. You want to answer these questions. Where am I now? Where am I going? Am I on track? And what do I need to get there? I'm a big football fan, and I always think of this analogy as, if you were playing football and you intercepted a pass and you're like, okay, I got the ball, I want to go try to score a touchdown for my team, but you hadn't studied where you were on the field. You didn't know that halftime has passed and we've switched directions. You don't know what goal to run toward. You don't know where these opposing players are going to be coming from because you hadn't watched enough film. It's just a goofy analogy, I know, but I think it kind of illustrates the importance of having a plan. And then we know what's going to likely be in the way and what direction we're going to go. So as a process, these are the steps we want to take. And, whether you do your own planning or you work with an advisor, these steps are very important. So the number one thing is to document your cash flow, your monthly spending. This budget, not everybody lives on a budget while they're working. And I would say that most, if not many people, don't have a budget at all in their working years. Because they're living within their means and they're getting that paycheck and they're not too worried about it. So sometimes with people, this is the first time they've actually had to put a budget in writing. But I want to do that. I want to document it. And then once I've documented it, I want to go through it with them and split it into 2 categories. What bills do we call essential and what bills are discretionary? And this is coming from the client, not from me. Yes, your house payment, your utility bills, your groceries, your health insurance. I think everybody considers those essential. But there are some other things that people have as essential. I have clients that put plane tickets once a year to go visit their grandchildren as an essential expense in retirement because that is non-negotiable with them. Clients that say, I want to play golf once a week in retirement. If I get to play twice a week, well, maybe the second time is discretionary. So we want to go through that budget and kind of talk about which bucket these expenses go into. Second, I want to verify the sources of income you're going to have when you leave work. So that would be currently when you leave work, and then looking ahead, what may be able to kick in down the line. Maybe you retire in your 50s, but you're not eligible for Social Security till you're 62. And maybe based on running some numbers, we think maybe you shouldn't even turn it on till you're 67. But those are great questions that we want to address. And then also not just future sources of income, but potential sources of income. So, going back, maybe you say, hey, if I need to do a part-time job for a couple of years to make this whole thing work, what would that look like? How much do I need to make that work? And then I can think about what kinds of work I could do. Number 3, go through the assets you have and identify what strategies you're using. Many people, they have these different accounts. Sometimes it's like a kitchen junk drawer. You have 5 401ks from the jobs you've had in the past that you really haven't paid any attention to. It's pretty common. I see it a lot. But we want to identify all the assets you have, what strategies they're all using, if any. We're going to evaluate them and update them. Sometimes we want to consolidate them. Sometimes, like I had said earlier, we put them in different strategies based on the time frame. But we need to at least know what you have. Number 4, we go back to number 1 and try to match these expenses we came up with the income streams and where the income's coming from. In a perfect world, we want your essential expenses to be covered by guaranteed income sources in retirement. Remember, the guaranteed income is generally pensions, Social Security, sometimes annuities. We can also use safe types of assets like CDs. Now, CDs aren't paying very much now, but historically, I've had a lot of retirees in the past use bonds and CDs that were very safe and would generate some interest to help supplement. We got to find some other places to go now until interest rates go up a little bit for that. But the idea is that we have essential expenses, things that are non-negotiable. If the market suffers a correction, we don't want you not to be able to make your mortgage payment. Okay, so that's the idea. So we want to, I have a big whiteboard here in my office, and I like to sometimes flow chart this out for people, and we try to get creative with it. Usually that leads to number 5. We have to go back and revisit the budget a little bit. Sometimes we have to make adjustments. And number 6, adjust and examine your levers. What changes can you make if you need to? We mentioned maybe you work part-time. Maybe we discover, gosh, if you just tough it out one more year, you won't have to work part-time. And that's a personal choice that you can make. Maybe you decide to downsize your house. I have one client who didn't want to do that, although her plan said she probably needed to. And she said, you know what? I've got a lot of friends around here. I'm just going to see if I can get a roommate for a year or 2 and help me with that. And then once that's over, I'll be old enough to start my Social Security, or maybe waiting for a pension to kick in. So these levers become very important. And that's why going through this process of planning and identifying things will show us what levers that you have available to you. And number 7, monitor periodically. A financial plan is a living, breathing thing. It's not that you get it all done, we print it out and hand it to you and off you go, and we never talk about it again. So we want to review it. I do at the very least an annual review with my clients, because sometimes life changes and oftentimes it does, and we want to review it more often than then. So I would say, as if you're going through this process, how are each of these steps affected by those 6 risks that we talked about earlier. And as an advisor, that's how I would tie it together by, getting this plan together and going back through the risks, the withdrawals, the inflation, the longevity, the market risks, and so forth. And how does your plan address each of those? I just threw this in there, a couple extra thoughts that I've had comments from real people that we've talked about. Healthcare is obviously a huge topic now. If you retire before age 65, that you might be able to do COBRA through your employer. You might go to the marketplace and buy an individual plan, but to understand what the choices that you have available are. Many people have HSAs at work that they can contribute to. If we're planning in advance, maybe we are starting to, we want to fund and invest those and use that to pay for health care for that person who wants to retire before they're 65. Maybe we use that HSA to pay for their health insurance because we planned in advance to get it to the right amount to do that. If you're facing a more sudden instance of retiring, you may not have that available to you, but you do need to understand what options you have for healthcare. The changing tax code, right now it's a moving target. We may get new tax code next year, depends what Congress and the Senate do. But to know, and in your mind, what your income streams, when they're changing, how will that affect you tax-wise? And are there changes that you could make to your strategy that could allow you to perhaps keep more of your own money? Lost opportunity cost, those are discussions that I have every day, whether it's, are you investing too conservatively or too aggressively? Or, if you're going to, downsize your house, or should I own a house at all in retirement, or should I be a renter? Sometimes, we're so stuck in the forest, we can't, that we can't see the trees. And that's where that I think is worth a conversation of what other opportunities aren't you seeing? Many people, especially, in their 50s and 60s, are part of the sandwich generation, so maybe they're trying to take care of themselves, but maybe they have children they're helping out. Maybe they have parents they're helping out. And it's really hard when you're squeezed like that to prioritize. So those are some of the conversations we have, is to try to, to come up with some ideas in the plan to help with whoever you're obligated to be helping. We want to make sure that you can fulfill your family obligations too, wherever possible. The everyday is Saturday syndrome. This is always a funny one, because almost every person I've ever worked with in retirement planning, when they retire, they generally spend more the first year than they had budgeted, or maybe even more than they've ever spent. Because when you're not going to work every day, sometimes every day is Saturday to them. And really what that means is what you do on Saturdays becomes the other 6 days of the week. And a lot of times what we do on the weekends, costs money. Maybe we're traveling, we're going to museums or events that cost money. Maybe we're shopping. Maybe we have hobbies we like to do. And suddenly you're doing that every day of the week. So it is something to be wary of. And as an advisor, it's something that I want to talk about. Kind of feeds into having too much time and not enough to do. I've had people retire without, they may have a financial plan, but they don't have a personal plan. And sometimes you have that personal fulfillment to be happy. And all of a sudden they don't have anything to do. Maybe they were a busy executive or just working a lot, and they never developed any hobbies. Maybe they don't have friends or family nearby, or they do, but they've been too busy not to, to nurture those relationships. So, I think retirement has a very personal lens to look at it through as well. Inflation, talked about that already. It is a hot topic, and people are asking about it more now than ever. Relationship check-ins. Retirement can be really hard on couples. I've seen it a lot. One spouse isn't used to having the other spouse home all the time, and it drives them crazy. So, it's something, as if you're part of a couple, that you certainly want to discuss how retirement would affect you and how you spend your time together. And then the housing hurdles is a tough one too, because of our real estate markets we've had all over the country really just booming. That I have people that want to downsize, but then they're looking at, what are my options of buying a house? I buy a smaller house, but it's going to cost as much as I'm going to make on the other house. So, sometimes we can time some things. Renting may or may not make sense, for some people, but we want to approach everything with an open mind. So many of these things you can do on your own. I know a lot of people that have. Sometimes they meet with me just to double check their own plan that they've made, and it's just fine. But there's also a lot of people that really aren't sure how to approach this, and also with just the sheer sometimes fear of the unknown and maybe fear of lack of knowledge. Having a qualified advisor to help can be really, really helpful. 84% of retirees that were surveyed said that working with a financial advisor gave them a greater sense of security and more comfort regarding their finances and their lifestyle. And then 7 out of 10 people, according to the survey, who work with a financial advisor have a plan and an estimate of what these things are going to look like, versus only 4 out of 10 of the do-it-yourself investors have any plan at all. I would add to that, I read an article just the other day from the National, Financial Education Consultants, I think it was. But they do some big surveys in our industry, and they found that only about 47% of adults were able to pass a financial literacy exam that covered just all the basic topics we talked about today. Only 47% were able to pass that. And of the 47%, the average score was 57. So it wasn't very good. But that just says, people tend to go to friends and family sometimes for financial advice, and instead of going to somebody who is a qualified advisor. So I would encourage you to find a good advisor if you need one. And I don't think you'll be sorry you did that. Otherwise, that's it for my presentation today. Are there any questions out there? Oh, okay.
Hi there.
Hi, Barb.
Jana, that was a great presentation. I loved what you said about people, not really working with a financial advisor. And, sometimes people think I don't have enough money, or kind of I'm embarrassed, or I'm afraid, or maybe it won't be what I think it is. I liken that to like drilling your own teeth, or, you know, uh, cutting your own
I
hair
don't change
sometimes.
the oil in my car either. I take it to somebody who knows what they're doing.
Exactly, right? So you go to the professionals, and even when you said about the financial literacy,
Mhm,
the reason that's out there is because it can get complicated. It's a
mhm.
whole study, it's a whole practice, and nobody taught us that. So how are we supposed to know if we didn't study it?
Right.
And that's why here at Purse Strings, we always say work with a financial professional. Go out there and look at the ones that we have on our site, interview them, see who
Mhm.
you connect with, ask all the questions that you want. And once you find somebody who you're comfortable with, it will just save you so much money in the long run.
Absolutely. You think if you have investments and you look at your accounts every day, which some people do,
Hmm.
it can often go up or down more than a percent or two in a given day.
Hmm.
And you think, what most advisors will charge for advice, whether they charge a percentage of the investments that they're managing for you,
Hmm.
or, I have clients that really don't have assets maybe to manage. Maybe they're younger and just starting out, or maybe, like my client I mentioned earlier, most of their money was wrapped up in their 401k, which, as I was not able to access as an advisor, but they really needed the planning. So there are many advisors, like here at our firm, we are fee-based advisors, and we can do standalone financial planning for a fee and not tie it to having to manage assets. And you were exactly right, too, that most people think you need to have a lot of money for an advisor to help you. And
Right.
I can tell you that people with lots and lots of money always think they need more money, that they don't have enough. So,
Yeah, that's true, right? What's enough, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and so, I love bring professionals like you out here and sharing like some of the steps, some of the foundations, some of the basics, and what you need to know, and see what an actual financial provider does, and what they look like, and what the services are, because sometimes it's kind of like, well, they don't even address it, or you know what I mean? They don't really know, and it can be complicated, and that's why we're kind of wading through all the noise here and really providing very clear and concise direction for women to get started.
Well,
So,
and to do it in a non-threatening environment is
yes.
so important. When working with women, I think, I know even myself, I've been a part of, I can tell you about a time I was trying to buy a car, and my husband was there, and, it's my car, it's my money, it's my decision. He had some questions on the mechanics of the whole thing that he wanted to be there to ask. But
Hmm.
in the end, they directed the whole conversation to him. And I
Hmm.
was so angry about that. And I know it happens to women even worse than that all the time. And so I think having the right group of advisors, which you two have done just, I think, an amazing job of finding advisors who can really, you don't have to be a woman to connect
No,
with a woman, although it
no.
can be helpful. But just having the mindset of being a good listener, and that knowing that everybody's different and they're going to come at things with different opinions, and to be open to how you might work with that person.
Great. Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much for presenting today. It's been
Thank you
terrific.
for having me.
Max, are you there? Can't hear you. Maggie's having some technical
Yeah.
difficulties. Maybe she needs to re-plug in. But anyway, I want to thank you, Jenna, for showing up today and presenting all of your knowledge and skill to our community of women. As everyone knows, we're here every Thursday. We bring you financial experts like Jana. And we love that these professionals are warm and welcoming and ready to serve, answer your questions, and provide what women want and need from their financial professional. And so, can't thank you enough for being with us today, and look forward to having others reach out and connect with you through purse strings or directly to your own site at, I'm looking at the J. LaVanway.
Jay LaVanway at
Yeah, at
juncturewealth.com.
juncturewealth.com. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, y'all.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.